Hi there, and welcome to the Pod, the Northwest's newest all-purpose recording studio for content creators. If you've got something to say and need a place to say it, search for podpod.uk. In all the usual social channels, give us a like and a follow, and get in touch to reserve your time to create.
Right, so welcome to the Proper Good podcast. I'm Caeryn Colins and I'm here with
Owen from Unify.
Marvellous, thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. Can we start with the obvious question? Can you tell our listeners what a credit union is and how does it differ from a traditional bank?
I love that question because it is the difference to a traditional bank that explains what we are. So we're savings and lending, so just like a bank in that sense. But if you think about where your money's going in a bank, so when you save with a bank, where are your savings going? And they're usually going to be invested in things that you probably don't know a lot about. And that might be things that you wouldn't have chosen to put your money into. At the same time, if you borrow from the bank, that interest that you're paying them, that's the profit that they're making. So where's that going? And the answer is it's going to the shareholders of the bank. They're people you'll never meet. They're pension funds. They're offshore investors. They're the people that built the big buildings in Canary Wharf. Contrast that with a credit union. So when you save with the credit union, where's your money going? Your money's going straight back out into your community to the people that want to borrow. So when you're borrowing from a credit union, whose money are you borrowing? You're borrowing from people in your community. When you're paying interest, who are you paying it back to? The people whose money you borrowed. And at the end of the year, if we've made we always call it a surplus, but if we've got too much left, we hand it back. So we're owned by our members for the benefit of our members, and by members, it's our community. So we just gave a dividend back and a rebate back of £300,000.
Wow.
So that's £300,000 that we were able to say, we run this place well. We didn't spend that £300,000. It goes back. So that's a very long answer to it's community banking.
Brilliant. No, that's fantastic. So what do you think are the core, or I say think, what are the core values and mission of Unify in particular?
It all starts with inclusivity. The amount of people who are left behind by banks and credit card companies, they just can't borrow. Estimates anything about 12 million people in the UK. So if you bring that down to our community, it's hundreds of thousands of people that are excluded from mainstream borrowing. So this inclusivity, we're not computer says no. So every loan application is looked at, it's taken on its own merits. And what we're worried about is, can you really afford it? We're not going to lend if you can't afford it. Beyond that, what we're looking at is how do we lend? How do we make sure we're a responsible, ethical lender? So that inclusivity is core. I think I touched on it, community. We exist only for the benefit of our community. We don't do anything that isn't outside of where we live, where we work. Community, inclusivity. And then that idea of it's ethical. Is your money is going exactly where you think it's going?
Exactly. So what are you doing to increase the membership or even the knowledge of the credit union in the borough?
It's a really good question, and we've been wrestling with it, and all credit unions are wrestling with it, because I was at a conference, somebody described it as we're the best kept secret, to which I think we'll stop keeping the secret.
Yeah.
Got to tell everybody about it. So things like this are great. The other thing we're looking at is I think we've become very good at knowing a part of our community, and that's the part that we can see. So they're the people that find us in a way, and the way we sort of describe it is people who are a bit in crisis and people who are in trouble. They're people who maybe have fallen out of favour with mainstream lenders. They've maxed out their credit cards and now they're finding us, and that's great. I always want to be serving that part of the community. But there's another part which is people who are just about managing. So they're living their lives, they're ticking along, but they're one vet's bill from real trouble. And what we want to do is just work to make a presence known in that community, because what we can do is say, well, you're pretty heavily indebted, very high interest rates, credit card debt, overdrafts, payday loans, all that stuff is expensive. We want to turn up and say, listen, it doesn't have to be like that. You can borrow from the credit union at a lower cost over a long period of time, make it affordable, take that stress away. So it's really about, first of all, our job is to identify where we're needed. That's what we're here for. And once we identify that, it's to say, well, where will you find us? because we can't sit back and wait for you. And one of my team's got a great phrase of how we're changing the dynamic is, we used to wait for you to come through our door of our branch. We're going to bring the door to you.
Okay.
So at some point I'm going to unscrew a door and we're going to have to take it out for a photograph.
I look forward to that one. In the meantime, though, where do you see yourself in terms of accessing those communities that you could really help? How do you see yourself doing that?
That's a huge focus for us. In a way, I'm blessed by being here, because this is a town that has great community organisations. I think we've always wanted them to signpost towards us, when actually that doesn't work. If you're there already, why are you going to come and find us? Even if someone says, let's take Citizens Advice. Citizens Advice are talking about money. There's a point where you talk about money where you've got to talk about saving and borrowing. Rather than just saying, well, there's a credit union, you can do that if you can find them, here's their address, here's when they're open. It's actually about working with Citizens Advice to say, is there a time when we can be in your office? Is there a time where you can signpost, the credit union's just there? And so lots of that. We're really shifting our approach from sitting in a branch to being out and actually asking those favours. Can we come and sit in your, in whatever it is you're doing at that time? And
so you're happy for community groups to actually contact you and say, we run a club every Thursday at 2 till 4. Would you come and?
I would be overjoyed.
Brilliant.
That's the challenge for us in the next 6 months, is to make our presence felt. I think we've been hidden for too long, and that was a big thing for me. So again, this is great, because then I can start sharing this and saying this is what we do, and people trust you.
So my next question then is a little bit about you. What inspired you to go and work for a bank like this, bearing in mind your background in traditional finance?
I think to some extent, I don't know if it's a midlife crisis, maybe. Turned 50.
Cheaper than a motorbike.
Cheaper than a motorbike. It was that all the businesses that I've built have always been about inclusivity. So it starts out with just things like free credit reports. You shouldn't have to pay for it, it should be free. It moves into things like helping people build their credit score. So I'm always sort of minded, it's always about this inclusivity. And then it became a bit about, I'm from here. And I'm doing this work, and I had an office in Alderley Edge. Well, I'm not from there. I don't know anything about Alderley Edge other than I don't really like it. Sorry if you're from Alderley Edge.
I'm not.
And I don't get to see the impact of the work we do beyond the reviews we get back from customers. That's different. So then you look at it and you say, well, where's what I do? Where does it have an impact where I care the most? And it's the town I'm from. Because this is not a town that is bulging with opportunities for people. It's got its great qualities. It's quite a hard place to grow up sometimes. So it's, right, how do I help the town that I know? And then I guess there's a degree of selfishness is I get to see it. If we do our job really, really well, to some extent it's invisible, but we should have a massive impact on the communities that we live in. So yeah, I think it is a bit of a, you used a phrase the other day is, you knew it, what did you do about it? It was, if you can see it, you've got to do something about it.
Yeah.
So I can't be there just doing stuff while I don't know, well, I could see the community that I'm from struggling. And I know it's struggling because I can see it at a numbers level, I can see it at a community level. You've got a chance to do it, do it. And I'm really lucky is I sat there and thought, time to have a midlife crisis, give up the shiny office, wouldn't it be great to do something in the community? And Unify needed a new chief exec. And there's a load like, how did you come to join Unify? And the answer is, I was in Tesco's looking at peanut butter, and LinkedIn told me that they needed a chief exec, and I thought, I'm going to go and do that. But I've never chased a job harder.
Right.
I was like, that's what I want to do for a living. That's what I want to do in my life.
And I often talk about businesses that work in social value who really give something back as being a catalyst for positive mental health. It's actually good for you when you do something. A simple act of kindness, it increases your oxytocin, doesn't it? So, how do you equate the job that you've got in terms of you and how you feel when you're getting, kicking off your shoes at the end of the night thinking, well, I've been able to make a difference. Do you think that working in that kind of sector is good for your mental health?
Yes, definitely. I love this job. And I've done loads of stuff where you'd say, I bet you enjoyed that. And actually I reflect on it and I go, in its own way, I did. You get these moments, but I've never loved a job like this. And it's not like it's glamorous. I've got a windowless office under a car park in Wigan. and I spend my days doing all sorts of stuff. But I love it. But I think there's also a thing, it is hard. Right? And I think you kind of, there's a learning coming into the third sector, which is just how hard people work. Because I've spent 35 years in a corporate environment thinking I was working hard, and now I realise not even close. The demand, the breadth of what you've got to do, and the expectation, because you can't let up. That's the downside. Is you're accountable to yourself, and you're accountable to the people you're doing it for. And I just remember on the run up to Christmas we're really busy. We get swamped, and we were starting to drown in loan applications, and our finance manager came in and said, how are you feeling? And I went, I'm all right. And she went, how do you feel about the fact you'll probably ruin people's Christmases if we don't get this out of the way? I went, thanks for that.
Yeah, my children didn't get any presents. It's all your fault.
Nobody got Christmas presents in our house because I was so busy at work. Now that's the downside. I think you can tend to become maybe a little bit pious and a little bit maybe a little bit selfish. The people need me, and they don't, right? They were fine without me. They're not going to remember me. But it is. And you don't get to kick off your shoes. You know this, right? When was the last time you actually kicked off your shoes and just went, I've got nothing on my mind to do tonight?
I was probably about 8 or 9, I think, but yeah, okay. No, I get that, definitely.
But I think you have it worse than me, because I have one thing. I have a credit union, and I've got to make it work. You're across loads of stuff, and you're doing it. This is a job for me. At the end of the day, it's a job I love. It's a job. Yours is you're even more stuffed, because yours is a calling.
Yeah, I think because I work across sectors and would like to see it all join up, I think to the detriment of our local economy. I think that's the challenge, but yeah.
Love that. Right, sorry, I might be preempting a question. Glue is what's brilliant about Wigan, and I'm going to pick on Wigan even though Unify has lots of other areas. This is about Wigan, is it's got loads of great stuff going on. Yeah. Its peril is it's going on in pockets. Yeah. And actually people like you are really important because you're the glue. Yeah. Before I met you, I'd heard your name 100 times in different contexts, and I think that's got a multiplier effect on it. Yeah, and I think there's lots of people who are doing similar things to me, and we do all talk, which is great. Yeah. But yeah, we definitely need some of that joined up approach. So, talking about being joined up, then, how do you think the credit union aligns with the whole social enterprise sector in terms of giving back and reinvesting your profits and that kind of thing, and sustainability? Because actually, I think something you touched on in your first answer answered that question about sustainability in terms of how you reinvest your money. That makes me feel better about our commitment to sustainability. Okay, good. We are a social enterprise. Yeah. That's at the heart of it. We exist only for the benefit of the community that we serve. It's a nice sort of easy checkpoint there. I think we sometimes forget that social value is at the heart of it all. But I think it in a way, let me try and think about how to answer that slightly better. We are a social enterprise, and a lot of what we do is around that sort of social value creation. So think about what we're talking about. There's an invisible group of hundreds of thousands of people in our community, and we want to make sure we align our products, our service delivery to their needs, so that, and why do we care? You asked me that question and asked it in a way that really made me think. Why do we care? And we care because it matters. Because if we can help large groups of people in our community, then the whole place benefits. So I don't know if that fits the definition of social enterprise, but that's to me, the social side of what we do, pure social.
Definitely.
And then just monetary, like I said, we're member owned, the money goes back to our members. What I want to get us to is where some credit unions have gotten to, which is a great place, which is, so take that 300,000 that we had spare at the end of the year, and we said, well, this belongs to our members. It was their money in the first place. I think there's a relationship we have with our members that gets better over time, where we say, you invested in us because of the good that we do. So rather than give you all of it back, can we take a proportion of it and work with local organisations to make that as a donation or an investment or something around there? Is that, you know, on an individual level across our membership, that money matters to them, but if it was ever so slightly less, that ever so slightly less would matter where we put it, and then we're really participating as a community organisation, creating change beyond just good lending, good borrowing.
And you've done a little bit of that, haven't you? You've invested a little bit in social enterprises.
We did. So Lee Spinners Mill, we helped invest in that. So there was a sort of a relationship where we were introduced to them. So we're part of a consortium of credit unions, and it's a wonderful thing being in a credit union, because there's no competition between other credit unions. It's all collaboration. So I can, as a new boy, I was able to pick up the phone and say, can I come and see you? And everyone's welcoming, and they say, oh, let me tell you the mistakes I've made, let me tell you things that we've done really well. And what that came to is as a consortium of Greater Manchester credit unions. Greater Manchester is like credit union heartland, cooperative movement. Yeah, it's brilliant. And there's a consortium of credit unions, and they've worked together with the Mayor of Manchester to fund the annual bus pass. So he's got a big thing. He wants more people getting on the bus, getting to work. But buses are expensive. You pay each week. Where'd you borrow the money from to buy an annual pass that doesn't charge interest? Well, why don't you go to your credit union? Because he did a deal with the credit unions to say, this is a nice intro to credit unions. You lend the money for the bus pass, and we'll underwrite it. If they don't pay, we'll cancel the bus pass, and you're not on the hook for it. But that was across. We were able to do it because it was all the Manchester credit unions. We were in a room, and we all said, let's do it. So we all shared how we're going to do it, did it on a date. All the social media posts are the same. So yeah, it's through that we got introduced to Lee Spinners, and they were doing a load of redevelopment work, and got some funding, but also wanted to borrow towards it. And we were able to say, well, it sort of aligns with, never forget our money, it's members' money.
Yeah.
So we can't play fast and loose with it. You know, if we lose it, we've got to go to the AGM and say, I'm sorry, I lost your money, which I don't want to do. We were able to lend Lee Spinners Mill some money for their redevelopment, and that, talk about some compounding effects. So we lend some money to Lee Spinners. Lee Spinners create this space that is low cost and allows people with great ideas to try them out. So I went there, and all I thought was like, have you been?
Yes, a lot.
It's brilliant. All I thought as I walked around is, oh, I wish I had a job cool enough to work here. As it is, I have a job that paid for it.
But a good majority of the people in Lee Spinners are social enterprises.
They are. So I loved that aspect of, you know, if members said to me, why did you lend our money on that? So think about the local economy. That's keeping it in the local economy. That's empowering Lee Spinners Mill to exist, which empowers loads of social enterprises to be created in a lower risk environment. And together. That physicality of being together, I thought was really cool. So I'd like to see us do more of it. I think we just have to resolve this aspect of, one, we're not experts in business lending. It's not what we do. And the second is it's a big chunk of change. You know, that's money that we could be putting out in smaller loan amounts within our community. At the moment, we don't have to make that distinction. We can do both. But that assumes that everyone's a Lee Spinners. I've been to Pitch and Pie and sat there and thought, it doesn't take much for this organisation that's pitching right now to see where this might go. And I think that's what I want to get to grips with for us is, how do we play a role there?
Yeah, I think watch this space. I think there's lots of things we can work on in that.
Fantastic.
In that area. I'm just going to pick that question of sustainability back up with you. As anybody who knows me knows, it's my
I was hoping I'd get away with
my
it.
pet hobby. But actually, no, I just kind of want to make people aware in terms of what you'd said about banks and what they choose to invest in. One of the things that I say to people is the most significant thing they can do to become to reduce their carbon footprint is to look at where they've invested their money, because the
I remember
majority
saying.
of high street banks are investing in fossil fuels and lots of other nasty things that you know probably should be aware about. There is a website called bank.green. You can put in your bank onto there and they'll tell you how green or how red they are. Really easy to look at. So I would encourage anybody who's thinking about wanting to be a little bit more sustainable to go to that. But what better way to invest your money than something that gives back to the local community? Because it's not just that whole principle of supporting sustainability and your carbon footprint, but you know, you're supporting community wealth building at the same time. So
Completely agree with that.
Yeah.
You should run a credit union.
fabulous. I think I've got enough to do. Thank you. What do you think are some of the challenges then that we face as social enterprise in the current economic climate?
I think it's hard to be a social enterprise. You are never cash rich.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, I remember it from the Pitch and Pie event, from talking to lots of people at different social enterprises. You're always trying to make it work, which means you've got gaps.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I look at our organisation, we're pretty scale. There's 23 of us, but we still are using some of our branch staff as temporary marketing team because we don't have a marketing team.
Mm-hmm.
So go back to your question about how do we spread the word. Well, ideally, I'd have some fabulous marketing team that are out there spreading the word. I don't, because I don't have the budget for that, because I'm too busy doing the doing. And I think it's even more profound for most social enterprises, isn't it? Is how do you afford sort of finance teams, compliance teams, risk teams, marketing, sales, all of it. And actually, I should say, I chaired a not-for-profit in Manchester for 10 years. Same problem. We had a great CEO and then a load of people, so this was the skate park, load of people that taught skateboarding and baked cakes and took entry fees. So you got one guy and he's got to cover everything from finance to, we were FCA regulated, to from running a skate park, you better make sure nobody dies.
Yeah.
You know, all that stuff. So I think all of that is a financial challenge. You're trying to run it really lean. And then also we're in an environment of high cost. You know, that's the reality of where we're at, is the people that you can employ. I never get this right, we're a living wage provider. Is that the most expensive one? Right? Because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And I still look at that and think, the talent that these people bring, the passion that my team bring, that's where we're at. I want us to really start to look at that model and try and say, well, bringing some of my commercial background, how do we get to a scale whereby we can really pay people for the talent, the passion they bring? So, and then just the cost of everything, office space, heat, light, the whole thing, the squeeze when you're a social enterprise and you're trying to deliver something that you're passionate about, that's meaningful, that's accessible. So, you know, think about, I'm trying to think, so all the businesses in Lee Spin as a cinema, which I really need to go to cinema. I loved it. I just wanted to move in there. But think about that as a social enterprise. He's got to pay his rent. He's got to pay for films. He's got to pay for popcorn, heat, light, and not sell tickets for 25 quid a ticket, because that's probably what it costs. We had a great community cinema it wasn't a community one. It was a cinema in Scam, owned by a guy, and I loved it. It was like a great 2-screen cinema that isn't there anymore. And I think if that was maybe a social enterprise, it might have had a chance of surviving. That's how hard it is.
Yeah.
Even as a social enterprise, you're up against it.
I think it's hard for SMEs as well. I think if you look at the kind of economic model that we've got now, years ago you would say that if you created 12 jobs in an economy, then it created 12 more. Well, it's not the case now, because most people, when they get their wages, don't spend it locally.
Yeah.
They're spending it at Tesco or at Amazon or whatever, and it's not coming back into the kind of local purse. So I think anything that can support us keeping money in Wigan, that whole community wealth building, is great. So, and I guess that's important to you as well, because you know you want people to go to your bank as opposed to go to the high street banks, because that's keeping the money in Wigan. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so you talked about the loans that you do give out. So how does Joe from number 17 come and become a member of the credit union?
So first part's dead on. Got to be a member.
Right.
So got to be a member of the credit union before you save and you borrow.
Okay.
But the two things happen at the same time.
Right.
And really, our online journey needs to be better.
Right.
So right now, if you want to borrow, you're probably going to submit your loan application online. We did some work on that pre-Christmas, which was good. But still, that hits a process at our end that often requires, can you do this, can you do that? Potentially, can you come in and see us in person, bring your ID? We're falling behind people's expectations in that. So there's a big piece of work this year to say, if we want to spirit you away from payday lenders and credit card debt, we have to make it work seamlessly. Because if something you said then about the other problem that social enterprises have is, I don't think people are shopping based on worthiness.
Mm-hmm.
They're shopping based on convenience and price.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't say, I do these loans, they're really good for your community, but they're more expensive. People go, why do I care? So my headline has to be, I've got to do an affordable loan. I've got to do it the way you're used to. But somewhere in that mix, I've also got to create an affinity for what we stand for.
Yeah.
Because I do want you, when you're buying from us, when you're getting a loan from us, or same with us, to feel the way that we feel, to be on the same mission that we're on. So yeah, it's right now it's far too complicated. You've got to become a member, and then you can set up your savings. Once you're in, it's dead easy. You can have your benefits paid into the credit union, and then have your loan payment taken from there, and you get the rest back, so we can send that back out to you. So that's the inclusivity thing. Is if your source of income's benefits, we'll actually consider you as long as it's affordable. So yeah, that's once you're in, it's great. We need to get that barrier to getting in much lower.
Okay. And what about businesses? How can they get involved? Do you do things like salary sacrifice schemes, that sort of thing?
We do, and that creates such value because it's easy once you're in. So Wigan Council are a partner of ours. So if you work for the council, you can nominate an amount to come out of your salary every month. Sadly, it's not the pre-tax pension version, which would be brilliant, but you can make a payment to your savings account before you get your salary. If I said to you, how much money do you have at the end of the month? Could you put 50 quid into a savings account? You go, absolutely not. I've spanked it. But if that 50 quid was never there, you probably wouldn't miss it. So one day, and we've had this, we talk about very personal, the credit union. We talk about experiences that members have had, whether they're people who really need us or people who really benefited. And there was a bit of storytelling the other day, and it was someone who worked for the council who rang up and said, I think I've been saving with you out of my salary for a little while. I just wanted to check how much I've got. And our member of staff had a look and they went, yeah, no, you have been paying in an amount every month. You got £4,500 in your savings account. And they dropped the phone. Because who's got £4,500 in savings account? So from a social enterprise perspective, no matter big or small, we can work with people to say, as you're running payroll, you can nominate. So first question I got asked when I joined the credit union, how much is coming out your salary every month into your savings account? I couldn't say no. So, so yeah, we can do that, and that makes a big difference. Because sort of taking a step back, one of the things that we're starting to get really focused on is resilience. So there is a distinct lack of financial resilience in Wigan. Not, I talk about our community. Let's name it. In Wigan, there's a profound lack of financial resilience. What that means is that if something unforeseen happens, you're in trouble. So the ability to turn from, yeah, I've got some credit card debt and I've got a loan, but I'm making my payments and everything's okay, to suddenly, I need to borrow, my options are really limited, and now I'm going to take on some high cost credit, and now I'm not going to be able to afford the high cost credit, and now I'm trapped in this loop. So we look at resilience and we say, first job is, if we can help you build savings. If you've got savings and the vet's bill arrives, you've got the money. So that £4,500 savings pot, imagine how much resilience exists in there. Versus I've got nothing. And that's one of the big member stories that comes out is, I finally got savings for the first time in my life. If you haven't got the savings, we're inclusive. So it's okay, you can apply for a loan, we'll look at you if it's affordable, we'll lend to you at a sensible rate, and as part of paying us back, one of the deals about being a member of a credit union, you save while you pay back. So some doesn't have to be a lot, it's a very small amount every week. We start to build that resilience. And I always think about it, we've talked about school uniforms. So school uniforms are, now I have to be careful, they're expensive. What did you tell me about? They're not expensive, they're a big outlay.
It's a big outlay at once.
But it's a hit. if you've planned for it, it's no big deal. So ideally, you've got your savings account, you save up all year, pays for your school uniform. So we're looking at things like, we've got a Christmas saver. So we're the weird people advertising with a Christmas tree in January. Because what I'm trying to say is, do the Christmas saver now. By Christmas, you'll have a big pot of savings to buy your presents. If you get to Christmas and you didn't do the Christmas saver, we do a Christmas loan. But part of the follow-on messaging is, it's okay, you did the Christmas loan, ideally next year, have the Christmas saver. Yeah. So that idea of resilience really, you start to make big change when you start to create that level of resilience, because instead of people sliding down the curve towards trouble, potentially you're coming the right way.
Yeah. How do you think credit unions can better engage with social enterprises and help scale their impact on the community?
Credit unions, it goes back to this thing of we're a well-kept secret. Firstly, stop being a secret. So I think we do need to start looking at our offering and thinking about social enterprise. We're in the space. We talk about being kind of interwoven as a sort of... we've just done a new logo. Sorry, I'm going to digress and I promise I'll come back. Just done a new logo, and it had 3 aspects to the brief. First one was community, which was our colours. So the colours in our logo are actually the sports team's colours of the areas that we cover, because that's community. Where do you actually meet people who go, I'm from Wigan? I mean, if you meet them on the bus and they're starting shouting about I'm from Wigan, you just don't make eye contact. But you go to the football, the rugby, oh, you're from Wigan. I wouldn't tell anyone at the rugby, I'm from St Helens. I told you now, safe. So we thought about community and colours, so sports teams. Then those colours have to be in a circle. So, because what we do is circular. We start with savers. You can't have a credit union if you've got no money. Your money only comes from savers. Savers lend to borrowers. Borrowers spend that money ideally locally. And then those borrowers are also saving at the same time, and they become the next generation of people who are savers that lend to the next generation of borrowers. And it's all wonderfully circular. And then this last thing is about being interwoven, is that we should be interwoven into our members' lives. We should make a difference, and we should be interwoven into this community. And the reason I pull that out is, go back to social enterprise. We've got to consider that's a really important part of what we do. If we're empowering, then social enterprise is how we empower. We've got to think about it specifically as to what we can offer. So payroll is one. Actual straight up business lending like we did for Lee Spinners, that's another. If we think about it like that, we start to think about how do we have an impact. That's a target market, and we can start to approach that target market. And then we're really blessed, aren't we? Because then we come to you and we say, hey, can we tell the world of social enterprise via all of your contacts, there's this credit union that's there for them, and you don't have to go to the high street bank, and you don't have to go to some high cost lender, you don't have to get yourself into swathes of debt. And then the other part, and this is a real evolution, we're good at stuff. So we're pretty good at money. I hope so. So budgeting, finances. There's a role that we can play, going back to what we said about social enterprise. You don't have loads of cash to just buy in talent. So there's a bit of sharing. I'd really love that idea of like, well, who's good at X? Because we're good at Y. Yeah. So I was going to pick on marketing, but I've got 2 great people in the organisation doing marketing. So I'll pick on some other function that I'm trying to think who we don't have. Who's good at community building? We're going to really strongly get into community building. Who can help us with that? Yeah. Who can do some training with my team on the best ways to do it? And in return, what can we bring? Because we can probably bring some technology, good at that. We can bring some budgeting. So I think that maybe is the last bit of it, is we're not just the bank of social enterprise. We're a social enterprise interwoven into that patchwork of other social enterprises.
And I can see that working so well with some of the community groups that we support and work with at the moment. They are, they're on the ground working with their communities, dealing with lots of problems that really come back to the fact they are not earning a lot of money, if they're earning at all, and then they've got this cycle of debt, and it's creating all the problems that social enterprise is there probably trying to solve. So I think working together, letting them help you with the community building whilst you're helping them with the things that you're good at, is just a perfect relationship, really, isn't it? So.
And you said something when we were speaking earlier about exactly what you described then. The people that are customers of a lot of social enterprises would make great credit union members. Pathway in.
Yeah, definitely. So, for somebody who's just starting up in the world of the VCSE sector, what advice would you give them as a chief exec of an existing social enterprise?
So I think I probably have a bit of that new boy experience, is that I'm not from this sector, so I had to learn it, and I had to learn it fairly quickly. I say that like I'm good at it now. I'm still learning. In fact, you asked about this job. Every day is a school day. Every day, particularly when I catch up with you, I come away and my brain's like exploding with new things that I've got to think about and learn, and that I didn't know were going on. So I think you can't come into VCFC, that sector. I haven't learned that bit yet. Okay. You can't come into...
There's a workshop on it next Thursday.
Brilliant. I'll be there. I'll be late.
Yeah, standard.
You've got to have the passion that drove you here. Really important. But also that kind of willingness to know that it has to work. So I've done loads of mentoring over the years, and when you mentor startup businesses, they've got no end of passion for the thing they do, and they're horrible with the numbers. So you say, let's talk about cost of goods sold, and let's talk about profit margins and operating cost and fixed cost and so do the boring spreadsheet stuff that weirdos like me love, and they just look blankly about why can't we just talk about gourmet hot dogs or whatever it is that they're, that drove them to do this. And I'm picking on gourmet hot dogs, obviously that's not it could be a social enterprise, but it's you've got to take it really seriously. The good part is you're surrounded by no end of people who want to help. If you know why you do it and you can articulate the value you're going to create and you mean it, which you've got to. If you don't mean it, go and find a job. If you're not willing to do it, but if you mean it, there's no end of people that will embrace you and say like, how do I help? Because they know you do the same. And it's one of the best things is you come from a corporate environment, and quite rightly, everybody you're talking to about working together eyes you with suspicion, because everyone's got the profit motive. You come into this sector and quite right, you're the good guys. The ability to pick up the phone to anybody and just say, hi, it's Owen from the credit union. Can I ask a favour? The answer's, of course you can. And it's true of the council. Council are brilliant. It's true of other organisations, whether it's everyone from sort of the Brick and Fairclem to working with you. Nobody's ever gone, honestly, I've no interest in the credit union. And nobody's pointed out that I don't sound like I'm from around here.
I think I did.
Once.
I think the one of the things that you do for the social enterprise sector, being a social enterprise, is you kind of show us that you can be a business that operates properly, that serves its community, that delivers on its mission, but be financially robust and generate a surplus and pay people a real living wage. And effectively, that's what we all want to do as social enterprises. We all want to deliver on that mission whilst being financially secure, getting a reasonable amount of money for it, because I'd say the good majority of a lot of our VCFSE sector are unpaid or very lowly paid. But using your example, I think, is great, because it's, we can see that actually a social enterprise can generate a surplus and do all of those things. So I think anything we can learn as a sector from yourselves is really useful.
That's really good to hear, because I think it's truism is we shouldn't see ourselves as second class and a cottage industry and muddling through. No. To some extent, I don't. Now I'm through this other side of it. I don't know why every organisation isn't a not-for-profit and isn't a social enterprise. All of those things that really, because you can do everything that you're supposed to do. Yeah. When this credit union is at the scale that we want to get it to, we've got big ambitions. We serve. So we've got credit unions have something called a common bond, which is the sort of community that you've defined that you're going to serve. So our common bond is South Ribble, Chorley, Wigan, Lee, and Warrington. So over 1 million people in our common bond, and we currently serve 8,000 of them. That's not good enough.
No.
were not meaningful. The ambition we've got to have is to serve 100,000 of them. Then you start to maybe have an impact. If we're an organisation, if we want to be an organisation that serves 100,000 people, we better have our act together, because you can't muddle through on that. We're a bank with 100,000 customers with, millions of pounds transacting every day. There's no shame in doing it properly. There's no shame in spending the money to do it properly, not just profligate spending, but just spend the money to do it properly, because at the end of it, anything that's left over, you're going to give back. That not-for-profit model, once I've seen it, I can't unsee it.
Yeah.
I wish everything I'd ever done was not-for-profit, because I can justify my salary, because I'm bringing a level of talent that grows. Credit union should earn 10 times what I cost. It's my metric. So there's no problem in me getting paid, as long as I'm generating a much bigger impact for the credit union. And at the end of it, that bigger impact is shared back in the community. It doesn't come to me. I don't own it, can't sell it. Why would I? Because I've just done something bigger than that.
And I think, I look at a lot of businesses that are trying to claim social value for some of the things they're doing. Social enterprises have got social value written right through it, and that's, totally evident in the credit union. And I've said this before, I think businesses, the business model that we currently have, the kind of, it's all about profit and let's make as much money as we can, has caused so many problems. But business can solve those problems as well. And I think business needs to look more to the social enterprise sector and look at how we're doing it. Look at being more mission led as a business. Any business can say, well, actually, yes, we can do this. Yes, we can generate a surplus. Yes, we can pay people, decent wages. We can still do all of that, but at the same time create the kind of mission that the likes of yourselves and other social enterprises in the borough have created. So
I love that. I'd agree with that completely. Is a corporate would love to have the sense of purpose that we have. They pretend, I've been there, we pretend, and we write values on boards and we write them on t-shirts, and we don't mean them. When you're in a corporate environment, there's one value, and it's like the growth of the organisation for the benefit of the shareholders or the owner. When you're the other side of it and you say, right, we're mission led, every corporate would kill to wake up in the morning and feel the way that we feel. Every chief exec reads books on how to bring people on the journey. Make it worth coming on the journey. And so completely agree. The flip side of it, and it is that if we really get it right as social enterprises, adopt all of the good behaviours that create growth and impact for commercial organisations, and at the end play the game a different way, commercial organisations should be frightened of us. We've got a post-it note in a picture frame that sits at the end of our timeline, and it says the banks are afraid of us. That's where we want to get to.
Have you actually got that on your wall?
Yeah.
Good, marvellous, great, can't wait to come and see it. On that note, I'd like to say thank you so much for your time, for giving us some fantastic background to the Unify Credit Union. If anybody wants to get involved, if I've got community groups out there who want to get involved, give us a quick, how do they get involved? How do they get in touch with you?
So the website's unifycu.org, and there's an info app. Just send an email through info app. It'll find its way to me or the team that we're starting to use to build communities, and they'll have your hand off.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Loved it.
Bye.